Morning, guys.
Good evening, good morning, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey all.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Hi. Also, it's all deadly silent. We're 3 minutes over.
Yeah.
I was actually waiting for someone from Intel to come in, but
I was just wondering, was it something I said?
Did they express that they had some problems with this time, or?
no, they didn't.
Okay.
Even
In fact,
yesterday's time, they were okay.
Yeah, we moved to this time for Alex's convenience.
Yeah, to accommodate them. So,
Exactly.
Yesterday, I didn't even have an invite. Did that go out somewhere on the mailing list, perhaps? Did it?
Joseph, that was cancelled, right?
Oh, yesterday was canceled.
Well, we've consolidated the two calls into one.
Okay, so there is no architecture call anymore.
No separate one, though.
no separate
Okay.
one. It's part of this one.
Yep.
Okay, so should we start? It's about almost 5 minutes.
So we don't have any Intel so far.
Or we can ping Alex. I'll ping him. If he's on. Yeah. Alex.
Is he alive?
Hello everyone, Rafa joined from Intel.
Ah,
Oh,
hey, Rafa.
very good.
Excellent. Yeah, we're hoping
Alex
someone
is
from, yeah.
Alex is joining as well. It says so.
Good. Okay.
Okay, Alex has joined, I think. So we'll start off. Um, so as per the elephant thing, we started recording and then supposed to show the anti-trust policy, which is available from the agenda link, and it's about since multiple companies are involved, they have to respect the copyright and those kind of stuff. And the contact information is also given here. So with that, I'll proceed with the agenda today. So we have a few proposals. For one from Intel. This is for properties for update service, and then we have a few more from HP. I don't think we'll cover all of them today, but we can at least cover 2 or 3 of them. So, Rafael, would you be talking about the properties for update service, or? Hello?
Properties for update service. Yeah, this was brought up by Intel.
Yeah.
I think we should push it to the next week because I need to, let's say, gather more material on this one.
Oh. So the
But
next
basically, this is the, let's say, as we are, let's say, integrating the BMC simulator, which was submitted to the ODIM a while ago. We are testing, and the simulator, as was discussed in the past, was enabled with the OPAF, Open Process Automation Forum profile, which is also available in the link provided. It's also available on DMTF site as well. And per this OPAF, which is fully, let's say, optional from ODIM perspective, there are some properties and parameters that we think should be added to ODIM. So this is just enhancement to currently supported update service.
Yeah, but Rafael, I looked up that PUF as well. There also, it's not mandatory.
Absolutely. So the way the OPAF and the way the OCP defines the Redfish profile, they don't mandate all the endpoints. But when you implement something which is not mandatory, but let's say recommended, within the the nested endpoint, there may be some mandatory properties.
Okay. So anyway, I mean, we are okay to have this implemented. The only thing was previously it was not used in either of HP or Dell plugins, so
Yeah.
it was left.
I'm aware of this. That's why this is brought as a separate, proposal for review and possibly, approve or reject from the ODIM TSC perspective. This is not some like current logic is broken, right?
Yeah.
It's an enhancement.
Yes. So that's fine. So you want to discuss it the next week, right? So let's go on to the next one. So
And
lot of
Roth,
noise
excuse me
on the
just a second. We can really hear somebody's like movement with scratching and mic. So when you're not talking, could you mute? Thank you.
Yeah, so sorry, just to be clear that on this properties for update service, so we're going to discuss that in detail next week then? Is that the conclusion with that?
Rafael wanted to discuss it next week. So
We can discuss it now. It's up to the TSC forum.
I just wanted to understand the implications of that versus the profiles that are already part of this. So does this mean then that we would need to extend the profiles that are already in ODIM to
Yeah,
accommodate
this is a good question, Martin. I don't honestly know the latest status for the profiles. I think that whatever is proposed here should be aligned, and then if it's not aligned with the ODIM profile, we would need to, let's say, merge those. I absolutely agree. There's needs for synergy for between what is proposed here and the profile that will be defined.
Okay. So, Jonas, you're on the call, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
So the profiles that we have so far, how do you think this would affect those then?
I don't know. As for the status of them, that's also a question. I'm not sure of if something happened when I switched companies, let's say. We had it pretty much working, and there was some work going on. So I don't know if Barath wants to give an update on that. But I didn't quite get the concept there of and how the emulator would have anything to do with that. I mean, the emulator obviously will know about. Would it be aware of some profiles then, and then use them to sort of send properties that are populated according to those profiles? Or is that the case, Rafael, or how does it work?
So Jonas, this I had looked into this and then see all these options which starts in the last three lines, that is HTTP push URI to multi-part HTTP. They have to do.
I can't hear you. Sorry. What are you saying? All these options, and then you disappeared there for a while. Sorry.
See the HTTP push URI onwards to the multi-part HTTP push URI. Now these are properties that are there in the spec, but not supported by either of HP or Dell or other servers. So this is to do with first pushing the smart update bits, the firmware or whatever, to a particular location on the ILO or the ID rack, and then subsequently starting an update.
Yes.
So yeah. So both the actual hardware don't support it, but the BMC simulator that Intel has come up with supports this.
Absolutely, because with the BMC simulator we can do anything we want, right? But basically, with Redfish update service, you have the first method that was added, which was defined because some vendors have proprietary methods. It was simple update. Simple update worked that way that you just provide the, let's say, the link from which the BMC or the server can fetch the image, right? So the simple update may be cumbersome, maybe not that easy because the client has to set up the web server and provide the image. That's why another method the Redfish defined was HTTP push URI, and this is basically the, let's say, command goes with the image itself. But then the Redfish forum work on this why would we have customers pushing multiple let's say images for all the BMC firmware or BIOS firmware or the NIC firmware, and this HTTP push URI, the multi-part was actually defined not so long ago. It's actually one of the latest enhancements to the spec that allows you to push for example, the full server BMC or full server firmware suite in one call. And I agree, those are, some of them are too new to be supported by the hardware. It's just we seek for the TSC to just look at this and provide the recommendation: should we add this support or should we be moved for later?
But so just so we understand, the profiles in ODIM, independently of what status they are in, serve two purposes. One, it is to give the northbound client an idea of what to expect when communicated with ODIM and its different services. Two, it gives the plugin developers some sort of instructions on what needs to be supported in order for them to be successful in developing a plugin for ODIM. So when we make changes here, those changes are gonna go and obviously affect the plugins, right? The other thing is that obviously it's nice that the Open Process Automation Forum has Redfish profiles. That's really good. But is there anything? So just because they invented profiles doesn't mean we have to align with them, right? Is it because if they are doing stuff that the vendors are not even close to have implemented yet, what good would it make ODIM to go and mandate that? It would just put a lot of stress on the plugin developers, isn't it?
I hear you, Jonas. I think one thing to remember, and just to make sure that whatever we claim the hardware that we support down the stream of ODIM, we fully embrace it in terms of the support for update service. I am not sure, and maybe this is just a reality, that everyone is using simple update for now. And with that, you're right. This could be just pushed for later.
I don't know everybody, but HPE certainly. Do we know what Dell is using? Is a simple update as well?
Yeah, Dell also supports simple update.
Yeah. This is a good question, though, and it will be interesting to understand how this open group developed their profiles. Is that something you are aware of, Rafael, and can talk around, or otherwise? Obviously,
yes. So when I was trying to find, when we were defining the baseline for BMC simulator, there was not much information available then. OCP profile for hardware management is very basic. It just requires very basic endpoints without any proper information about the properties. And then John Leung, who's our rep to the DMTF, he provided me with this profile because it was brought up from OPAF to DMTF Redfish Forum, and the DMTF Redfish Forum is just agreed to host this profile. So it is not mandatory, but it was the best, the most detailed profile we could ever find. This is the whole motivation why we embraced this OPAF profile and use it for implementation of BMC simulator.
Yeah, I don't think we have anything on the update service at all in the current profiles, and that's my understanding. I don't know if you have any other info, Barath, but that's my understanding. So it's not going to violate anything we have done. It's just that we haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe this is fair to just postpone it once we have more information about the way the update service will evaluate or proceed with ODIM.
Yeah, I don't know how it will affect, because if you go with these profiles and you say that this is what needs to be supported, then ODIM might support it, but then how do you implement it on the plugin side? Because it's not supported by the vendor. So it could be an optional or something. I don't know.
And Jonas, it's not just that. We had a thought about this internally as well, right? So there are some semantics that will have to be worked out, because being the resource aggregator, when we have this HTTP push URI, is it ODIM's push URI, and which it has to propagate all those things? Like if we decide to go ahead, right?
Can I ask a stupid question? I'm listening to this and I'm just sort of scratching my head, right? Because we said in the very beginning that ODIM would be an implementation of the Redfish APIs that was focused on interoperability. And to me, that implied that it's top to bottom, bottom to top. So if we want to support the full extent of the update service endpoints, then yeah, we should do that. And yes, we would need to change the plugins. And we would also want to change maybe some of the, the integrations we do with tools that actually would use this service. Okay. I just, we keep kind of going between two perspectives. One is we shouldn't do anything that the spec, doesn't mandate or the OCP doesn't mandate. And then, we keep telling people that, we want to build a version of Redfish implementation that is focused on interoperability across the board. Well, is this going to help us interoperate? I think so. Then why are we arguing about this service?
I think the main issue that's being argued, Alex, is that none of the vendors seem to be supporting this.
Well, maybe that's a problem that we should fix because that's a value add.
But we can't, we can certainly try to influence the vendors to go and support this, and it will take them a few years. Or we can turn around and implement this in the plugins. Those are the two options.
At the very least, you could implement it in the generic Redfish plugin. And if you do that, then there's at least an option. And if a vendor, if some customer says, I want this level of interoperability, they can push the vendors to support the generic, Redfish plugin, if that's what we want to do. There are always ways of doing something. But I guess I just want to. We spend hours arguing about, what's in the spec, what's not, what we should be implementing, what we should not be. Are we going to be better than what the state of the art today, or are we going to be the same? If we're going to be better, then we should implement things in a way that we would hope it would achieve maximum interoperability. And if we just want to follow along, then what's the point of having ODIM?
Yeah, you're on a different level with that discussion than the discussion we just had.
Yeah, but Jonas, it's whatever level we need to be at. We just can't be schizophrenic. We said we would propose our own profiles, right? And those would be or extensions to the OCP profiles. And we would put, well, so to me, before we do any more of these projects, to me, that's the piece we have to focus on because that's what lays down the foundations for interoperability. Then you can say, we support the extensions. And if you want, to have a multi-vendor environment that's rich, this is the implementation you want to download.
Yeah, I think there are different type of alignment in the industry around the Redfish spec, and I think where you will find most disagreement, and you should check with John, and we can talk to the other Redfish guys as well, but that is around firmware and firmware upgrades specifically, and also around the BIOS. So when you talk about interoperability, that's basically where the biggest problems are, BIOS and firmware, right? So
Yes.
so that's why it's a harder thing to accomplish than it is in other services. When you just have a schema and you have some missing properties, and that information is hidden somewhere in some OEM tree, you can, as a plugin developer, actually do something about it. But if you want to support a completely new method of updating your firmware that is not supported on the vendor side and do the magic in the plugin, that's a big chunk to bite off, I think. That's the only problem.
Yeah, well,
I'm not saying as a principle you are absolutely right, Alex, of course, but yeah.
at some point you have to live up to the expectations you set with external parties, right? So, and then we need to use that. If we agree on what the expectations are, then yeah, whatever it takes. Let's put it this way. Before I would go work on Redis streams or alternatives to Kafka bus, I would go work on the profiles. right? And before I go and do lots of other things that I see listed here, I would go work on the profiles because to me that's foundational, right? We need to kind of lay this out in terms of dependencies as well and say, hey, look, there's a progression here. And the sooner we get past the foundations and start building the walls, well, the better off we're going to be. We have to do something. We have to establish that new de facto way of doing interoperability because then it'll be easier to convince somebody that they should support it. I agree with you, Jonas. Nobody's going to support the stuff in their plugins unless it's mandated by the OCP, and OCP is the prescription body.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good. There should be a discussion on where we are on the profiles and if it's something we can collaborate around across the project or what we can do there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to me, that's the foundational piece, guys, right? You know,
Yeah, yeah, and we should up level, right, from just update service to the generic profile discussion.
once
Yeah, I
we
agree.
once we have the profile discussion and we know what's what and what, you know, what methods are going to be supported and what API, you know, services are going to be supported. Once we know all that, then we can start saying, okay, this needs to be changed, this needs to be added, this needs to be removed.
So those profiles that have been around for a while now, right? And anybody can look at them. So how do we need to spend time actually going through all of it, or do we do that offline and come back with comments, or how do you want to?
Yeah, there is ties into many things. I think the original attempt for the profiles when I started fiddling with them was that to present some sort of a sensible requirement on what needs to be present for ODIM to work. And then, you know, I think we now have a lot of stuff in place where we can actually have a good story because we have the emulator, so we could basically make sure that that thing is compliant with the profiles. We have the generic Redfish plugin. We could make sure that that thing is compliant with the profiles, and then we can set up our whole CI/CD thing around the profiles and have everything work there, right? And then we could start push vendors to implement so they could actually work with a generic Redfish plugin rather than proprietary plugins to hide the fact that they are not completely compliant with the profiles, right? So we have the full capacity to do something about it now. I think it's just that it's been kind of an in-house HPE thing, and I was part of that problem, obviously. Even though we put them up there in a branch, we haven't really cried, please come and help, right? So we might need to do that. I don't know where we are on the HPE side either, as far as looking at it, because I know we did some tests and stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is that it's much easier to get concurrence or consensus to implement something new in a plugin if it's part of OCP compliance, right? And if a vendor is interested in OCP compliance, they will implement it. And if the customers are interested in their hardware being OCP compliant, well, then that makes them even more compelling. But we just need to make it rich enough, right? I mean, the profiles that are there today are too basic. And the reason they were too basic is because when you start something new and you build interoperability, you don't go for the maximum right away. You just kind of, crawl, walk, run. And so they defined some very basic things, and I can totally appreciate why. They didn't want to go too far. They wanted the barrier to entry to be low. Now we need to raise it again, and then again, and then again. But we're not going to get there if we just keep talking about individual services and how to change them. You know?
Okay. So how do we resolve this then? Do we?
So
Yeah.
what we need is a working group of, a small team. I would say, we would probably need, help from the guys who are involved in OCP, like John Leong is involved in OCP. right? Go off with folks from, say, Intel, HP, anybody else who's interested, right? And go define what it means, right? To have more extensive, more rich, interoperable profiles. And once we know, then the question becomes, do we push that change into OCP or do we maintain it somehow inside ODIM? I would argue that we push it into OCP, and then we develop our implementation to align with that.
Mhm.
That'd be ideal if we push it to OCP. That'd be,
But that's what we need to
mandated.
do, right? So my point is, before we push anything, let's come up with a coherent plan of what we want to push. John Leong, other folks from HPE, Red Hat, whoever who are part of OCP, they can come and help shape this in a way that needs to be shaped. And then we go in and we propose it. It's an open source community.
Yeah, and I'm just a voice, right? But we had a discussion with OCP on the profiles, and it was kind of I remember it as a feeling. It was a little bit strange. It was the profiles were kind of in a specifically working group and haven't been updated for quite some time. I think it would be a benefit for ODIM to have its own profiles, but if we could align, obviously that will be a stronger message, right? But then we have to sort of work with that working group. Do you guys remember what working group it was?
I think there's a hardware management working
Hardware
group.
management, yeah. The profiles is a separate repo on OCP.
But Jonas, I think eventually we may want to build, ODIM branded profiles. But since we have very little traction still,
Yeah.
I would suggest that we work through OCP to get everyone to buy in. And if they buy in, then the next thing is going to be, okay, if you really truly want interoperability, come work with ODIM, come rewrite your plugin. So I add them in the first place.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's very difficult for me if I'm an engineering manager inside some Acme Computing Inc. and you tell me that I need to comply with a profile that is being proposed by a fledgling open source community. I would probably scratch my head and say, why in the hell would I do that? I would, but if you tell me that it's OCP backed and OCP is important to me and to my customers, sure, that makes it, more business oriented. There's money on the table if I do this.
So guys, I need to switch to another meeting, but I think that this update service properties, we put it on hold. We start small working group within ODIM, right, to define the profiles. If possible, let's update it or to the OCP. If not, keep it as an ODIM profile.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds
I
good.
mean, I just hit their profile, Git repository, Open Compute Project. It's quite old, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't work with them, right? So.
Yeah, but then if it's quite old, then isn't that a good thing in terms of it's probably ripe to be updated then? Like
Yeah, exactly.
The thing they'll be lacking are contributors, right?
Open source, to just build on what Martin just said, open source is contribution driven. If there are no contributions, things will just, continue at a steady, state. If we come in with new contribution proposals, then that's fine. Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So from the we will proceed along that side along that way, Alex. So the status journals with the ODIM profiles was that there were a few issues that are being fixed. So the team wanted to ensure that at least ODIM passes that test before we publish. So that's in progress and should be done very soon. And it's the current version of the profile is available in the development branch.
Okay, I just want to. Would it be valuable for us to make sure that those profiles work with the generic Redfish plugin as well as then have the emulator.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I-
It doesn't mean that we have to wait for that to release them, but I'm just saying that that would be a stronger message.
That would be a round trip kind of situation, right? Where you could test what you support. So we
Yeah.
would want to make sure it's end to end. I say that even with the generic redfish profile, our goal was to eventually get to a state where nobody has their own redfish specific profiles, or at least they support everything in the generic one plus extras. So maybe that's what we need to also decide on architecturally, is that we're going to focus on that generic redfish plugin and and align it with OCP. And then, if somebody wants to add extra things, well, they could, because there's already a provision for that in the spec.
So, but does that mean that the conformance test should, comply with everything that's like, say, mandatory or recommended? All the values should be there, right? Then,
Yeah.
so, okay. Because I think then we'll have to figure out like what's the current compliance with the, say, OCP and see all these things that are there and whether they're supported or not.
But I mean, so we have what we have right now, and then we can go and try to push it into OCP. But I'm just saying, if we publish redfish profiles and we publish a generic plugin, and then in a different repository in the same project, you can find the emulator, wouldn't it be great for all them to work together? And then, that would allow us to verify compliance, right?
Yeah, that's what I meant when I said that we'll run the compliance. It was with the BMC emulator, because we know that all these things, it might be better handling than the plugins at this moment because the vendors don't support this.
Yes.
Yeah, so we can catch all these corner cases which are not being handled, and then fix it in the coming releases.
Yeah, very cool.
And yeah, so I don't know if we want to progress to the next set of issues. I feel feisty today, so I want to say something about these Kafka buses and everything else.
Okay, that's good, Alex.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that feisty conversation. So come on.
So if we're done with the update service, maybe we can recall what we've already talked about on the front, on this front, in terms of supporting different buses.
Yes.
Yeah, but can we? Sorry, I know I don't want to lose that previous point, right? Is that it is actually a bigger thing than properties for an update service. It is actually how do we standardize on profiles, right? To create the most impact for interoperability. So do we create a new topic for that, or do we update this one to say that?
I think we already have a topic for that, if I believe, or if I remember right, Jonas proposed when he was at HP. So I think we already had something there.
Yeah, so look at the first one on there.
No, it's not here, I think.
It's not the first one. Update service. There it is.
That was the basic update service that's implemented in ODIM.
Yeah. But there's no profiles.
But I think somewhere in this site we had put in something, right?
The profiles. Yeah, I don't know if that was a proposal ever.
Okay, well, so we should probably build one then.
Yeah, now when it becomes a little bit more involved, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah,
I could write it, right?
Yeah, please.
I wouldn't conflate it with anything else. Yes, I would keep it separate.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. Sorry, should we get feisty now with Kafka buses?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll move to the Redis streams. So see, one of the things we got feedback was that the Kafka bus is pretty heavyweight when it comes to constrained and deployments of ODIM, in the sense that if there are systems where there is a lesser memory and CPU power utilized available, then Kafka would be quite heavyweight. And we had done some digging around, and then we realized that we already have Redis DB. So currently, how this thing works is ODIM works is that we have this BMCs and Fabric, which publish events to the respective plugins, right? And the blue arrows are the current flow. So the plugin pushes it to the Kafka bus and then the event service. So nothing wrong with this. Performance is also okay. Decently. Our test systems, no issues. But and also, but the thing is that in a constrained environment, we'll have to set up this Kafka, which takes up significant amount of file store space, and then even the RAM usage is higher. So instead of that, what we investigated, we tried some things with Redis, and we realized that Redis has something called streams. So that is like a guaranteed publishing, it's like till there is a proper consumption from Redis, the message will be persisted. So at the high level, that's the requirement. So we propose that Redis stream is, used instead of Kafka, and this support for multiple message buses was already discussed, as Alex said. And
Can everybody go on mute, please, apart from Barath?
That's actually coming from Barath.
What is coming from Bharat?
The crackling sound that Susan was mentioning earlier.
Okay, I'll try to.
Yeah, maybe your new microphone.
Some background noise, some like you are typing something or scratching something, Bharat.
Okay, I think this is because this thing, mic hangs from the earpiece. So I'll hold it up and speak. So, do you find that issue even now?
No, it's good.
Okay, thanks. So this is basically the abstract, what I've already spoken about. And then if you see, so we found that, Redis stream can support much of the functionality similar to Kafka in terms of message delivery semantics. The only significant difference was that Kafka always persists the messages to the file system. So, and then, till all the consumers are done consuming, it will retain, or if the retention policy is, exceeded, then it will be deleting, pruning those messages. Whereas Redis data stores data actually only online by default, but it's can be overridden by configuring the database to be persisted to the disk as well. So we've seen that across reboots the messages are persisted. So what happens really is that unless the consumer, which will be the event handling service, when that acknowledges that this message has been consumed, only then it will be let go of. So this has additional benefits, like we reduce one component less. So if you are working on a edge site where there is lesser resource, then we can have reuse Redis database itself. And Redis stream is also part of the base Redis, so there are no licensing or extra components to be installed that is impacting. And finally, what I was saying is, coming back to what this Alex was saying, is that the current implementation of message bus within ODIM is using an interface. We have implemented a Kafka driver right from the beginning. So It's not exactly true because there are some other drivers which was not added. So here, if we were to add support for Redis, all we need to do is implement a Redis driver, which implements those interface methods, and then it should be done. So in terms of implementation, it's not a very major exercise, but yeah, I mean there are a lot of testing and other things to be done with an actual ODIM system. So this is a proposal we want to make that, in addition to Kafka. So this will be actually configurable, say at runtime, we can say whether to use a Kafka or Redis. And of course, the implementation will also not install Kafka bits or Docker images into the system, and just use Redis for messaging as well.
Are you ready for my feisty comments?
Yes.
Okay. So first, just an observation. ODAP, our sister community, has settled on Kafka, as have other communities within Linux Foundation. So to me, getting that to work and interoperate with the Mano stacks or whatever is above us, to me is like the top priority. Okay. Second thing is, and so if you go look at, for example, how they've implemented it, and this has to do with what I'm about to say next, they've created an abstraction layer. And they've arrived at a set of interfaces that are backed by Kafka. I mean, could be backed by anything really. And we've discussed in the past the notion of abstracting away the actual implementation of the event service, and not even focusing on, provide some default one that might align maybe with Linux Foundation, but if there are additional ones, well, that could be a vendor, that could be a value add from a given vendor, meaning that we don't actually have to support all these different permutations of different buses. Because if somebody doesn't like Kafka and they don't like Redis, they will ask for something else and something else and something else. Better define an interface that it can be implemented by using different technologies. We've talked about doing that. We've talked about generalizing things in such a way that the implementation could be plugged in. But again, we seem to forget that. And now we're back to just, adding one little bit at a time.
No, but I think, okay, so what Alex is raising now is very important, actually. And I don't know, when we looked at Redis, if that was discussed. It was more like comparing different type of technologies with performance and resource footprint, I think. So Baras, could the Redis track be implemented and still allow for this abstraction layer that Alex brings up? Because it is important. You will, if you get an abstraction layer with a pluggable message bus, you will basically allow for a lot of more use cases.
Yeah, I think what Alex is referring to is that adhere to an interface which doesn't need any change in ODIM, isn't it, Alex?
Well, the rest of ODIM would be using this abstraction layer to put events on the message bus or whatever you want to put on the message bus. But the act of replacing that message bus with Kafka or pointed to Redis or pointed to what have you in the future, Cupid, would basically not force you to make any changes to the existing communication between services and stuff and the message bus.
Well, there are a couple of things, right? I just don't want to lose one thing here in the middle of this discussion, and that is, if the operators we're going after are ONAP members, and most of the ones we're going after, if not all, are, then aligning with what that project has been doing in terms of event streaming and everything else would actually be beneficial, because then we could demonstrate how we interoperate with the Mano stack above us. They've settled on Kafka. They also use Collect D for infrastructure event collection. They use Prometheus for, for their services, I believe, if it's containerized or whatever. But my point is that nobody there has ever talked about Redis.
No, but Alex, I think that isn't actually what the use case is for this at all, right? So the idea is, and Barath, I mean, I'm referring even to like the last sort of 3 or 4 sentences in what I'm seeing at the bottom of the screen here, right? Is that ODIM was developed with an abstraction layer for a message bus, right? On top of that abstraction layer, we have built a driver for Kafka, and that's what's in the current implementation. There's no intention of replacing that abstraction or Kafka in ODIM. The idea is that we add to what's already there by creating a new driver, which would be for Redis only. And the reason why we'd want to do that is not for the sort of large ONAP type use cases where you'd want to manage hundreds of devices, but rather where you have a remote edge offering, right, where you've got a single rack with a few bits of gear in it, and we want to run an ODIM instance there, but the resources that we want to run that ODIM instance on are pretty tiny. But that doesn't matter, because there's not a lot of infrastructure that you're actually trying to manage, right, or gather events from. Right, so you don't need the might of a Kafka bus there, right, to go and handle all that.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Martin. I think as long as what's important to me is that we build an abstraction layer that other services within ODIM can use, whether they're public, exposed externally, or if they're private to the project. What I don't want to do is now have to worry about supporting Kafka and Redis and every other service that wants to do publish and subscribe to things.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair, as long as we have that abstraction layer and that doesn't go away.
Right. And so to me, we need to figure out if what we have there today is rich enough to support, Kafka, Redis, whatever, Cupid, whatever else comes along, right? And pub/sub frameworks are pretty well understood, right? So I think it would be possible to build a fairly rich generic abstraction for what we want to do. For ONAP, I guess what we need to be able to support in this is the ability to integrate ODIM instances into an existing event frameworks, let's say the ONAP one, right? Because they're consumers of that information inside ONAP that could benefit from the knowledge about the hardware state. So to me, rather than, we do need to make sure that we interoperate with these other projects. It's very key.
Yeah, no argument there.
Yeah, and for small deployments, if you just use Collect D, or if you use Prometheus, or even if you have running Kubernetes and you're kind of managing things top down, I think we need to support that as well, if we can.
Yeah. So okay, so I think we have a bit of quorum on this, as long as we have that adaptable abstraction layer, right, that allow, so the Kafka, there is no intention, as I'm saying, of replacing Kafka with Redis. It's more, making sure that we have got an abstraction layer and the ability for, and then on top of that, we would build a driver, right, for Redis.
Yeah, but Martin, so if you read the proposal now, and just to be very transparent, part of this is my fault as well, because I was very much part of looking at this. But if I read the proposal now, it doesn't really spell out this abstraction layer, and obviously that could be a separate proposal, as long as we don't go and implement something now that will take us further away from being able to replace message buses. So that's the only reason why it would be nice to see a little bit of language in here about that as well. If and obviously it might affect the implementation plan and all that, but I don't know. It's more of a Barath question, I guess.
Barath, what do you think? Does the language just need to change? I mean, the last few lines in it, the message bus communication is abstracted by an interface. Current implementation is only a Kafka driver. Further implementation will have a Redis driver added, right? So that it does talk about some sort of abstraction there, right?
Yeah, that was my thinking when I put that in, because the interface, as we've been discussing, is there. It's just that currently we only have the Kafka implementation, which uses that interface. Right? So adding support to driver Redis means we have to have a Redis specific method to publish for that interface.
But the interface won't change though, right?
No, interface won't change. So the rest of the code is not impacted at all.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just the driver.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what was the conclusion there? Do we need some language in here about the abstraction layer or not? We are thinking not then, because I think this is a principle, obviously, that we need to put down somewhere, and it doesn't need to go in every proposal, but somewhere we need to understand that we want to make this a pluggable architecture, right?
This is the thing I would support as well. Look at the picture. The way it looks now, my plugin has to support both.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe, Barath, we should change the diagram a little bit, if you don't mind, just to make it a bit clearer, right? That we have, we need the abstraction layer to be depicted in the diagram.
Yeah, but hold on here a little bit. I just want to comment on what Alex said. So on the plugin side of things, obviously, there, whether or not you abstract your communication with the implemented message bus is basically up to you. I guess the project could provide some template code or something, but if you come in and you wanted to make a plugin in Python, for instance, you couldn't use Go Micro anyhow. So you would have to sort of develop some Kafka thing and so on, right?
I think Red, to be honest, a particular language binding in an open source project is very problematic because you're limiting the contributions. So if somebody wanted to implement a plugin using some other language, they should be able to do that. That's my position.
Yeah, but the bus interaction is kind of naked, right?
That aside,
yeah.
There's a generic pub sub API that anyone can use to publish events or subscribe to them. And if those interfaces are backed by either Kafka or Redis or even a switchable implementation that knows what to do when, that's not to me, that's part of the commercialization of the distro. By default, in the reference implementation that we build within the community, we define the interfaces and we define one implementation based on Kafka because everybody else in LFN is using it. Then if HPE or Intel or somebody else wants to come along and Red Hat, I don't know, I'm dreaming of Ericsson and Nokia eventually, but if they can implement a completely different implementation of those pub sub interfaces, right? But what we need to do is decide what we want the pub sub semantics to be. Do we want to have an abstract notion of channels? Do we not need it? Do we need guaranteed delivery? Do we want, something more loose? I don't know. Let's define what that really needs to look like. in order to support different implementations. And then we got Kafka, and anyone for that matter, who wants to create a commercial distribution of ODIM can go and add an alternative if that's what they want, because we would have agreed on the interfaces.
I have a hard stop, guys. I'm really sorry. So I need to
Yeah,
jump.
I need to jump as well, but that's kind of what.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's pick up again then next week, right? Because we definitely haven't concluded on this yet.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can also send out some thoughts on the email list.
Yeah.
So we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
would be a good plan.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Good morning, Alex.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Good.
You sound tired. You pulled a late night last night?
No, just it's Wednesday.
Oh, okay. I won't pry any further.
You sent an email, Deborah, about Phil's calendar. We need to review that material with him this week because we want to include it in the B of A, and we don't want to include it unless he concurs that it's the right thing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So we do need to find time this week.
All right. I will try and find some time.
Yeah, otherwise we won't have enough time to prepare a slide deck.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys. Hey Deborah. Hey Alex. Hey Todd.
Hi.
Morning.
Hey Todd. So I just don't understand all this communication problems at ASMO. That's what baffles me to no end.
I do. I talk to Shima. What's happening is the COM going to from the CBO to the DIST. So when there's something slipping, neither the account manager know or the account got informed by account manager. And sometimes the team inform the accounts how they hear about it. Sometimes they don't. So in EMEA, usually there is a more sync meeting that when something slipped, when the CBO want to report a slip that arrived to them from the factory, the account team also gets that information, which is very appropriate. So in ASMO is not happening.
All right. Okay. Well.
Yeah. So we're gonna come with the recommendation. I talked to Shima, and we'll run it by you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. We gotta figure out how to streamline this because I don't have my arms and legs.
No, it's not gonna be you doing it. It's gonna be just GMB. But it's just as Kim said, there needs to be a matrix where the right people get notification too. Because I will be embarrassed if I'm account manager and I hear from my account that things slipping and things not happening, and I don't know about it too. So I agree with them.
Hey guys. Hey Deborah. Quick question: Is Phil out tomorrow?
Yeah, I just got a Slack from him stating that he needs to be out after the European presentation. So I'm trying to clear his calendar for him.
Okay. But he is doing the European presentation.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's also one
that's the 7 a.m.
heart attack. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Taha, what this means is the Board of Advisors working session will be without Phil tomorrow. And I think we still have to have that.
Yeah, it's okay. It's we just need to go over our own, material from the team. At least make sure everybody has their duck in the row, because we have another session, I think, for another review. I can't remember what dates. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. And just so you know,
since we're speaking on the subject, Alex, I found a 1 o'clock slot for Friday from 1 to 2 for that presentation.
Let's use it. No problem.
Okay, I'll get in contact with Matt since it came from his calendar.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
That's it, Pam.
Thank you. Okay. And then Taha, for the Board of Advisors, yesterday I sent out email, as you saw, to everyone with the
message from Phil.
Calendar. Yeah, and then I updated the calendar hit for everybody as well. And I think between Tarek and I, we got all the people. The only one that came up was Michael Kruger. I took him off. I put him on last time because they wanted a European representative. Mm-hmm. So I took him off since Shima would be there instead. Yeah. And he came back and said, "Oh, it looks like you're canceling the Board of Advisors. What do I tell Wortman?" And I said, no. We just took you off because Shima would be the representative.
Sure, that's going to go well with him. Yeah.
No, so I'll let him come back. I said, "Do you both need?"
Please do. Yeah, I don't like to take them off. I mean, especially they're not asking to copy every account manager, but if you want to be, make him happy, add him. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to come back. I was going to let them make the decision if needed to be
of course. So both of them can be there.
All right.
So she's representing Treff anyway.
Yeah.
But anybody declined, because I don't see the calendar from my end, it's coming from Phil. Anybody declined from the members for attending on the August 12th, or everybody accepts?
That's a good question. I got some messages back that certain people aren't working this summer during certain periods of time.
That's my objection a long time ago, Kelly time, that August, don't expect everybody in Europe to be there in August, because some of them just take the whole month almost vacation. But with COVID, I don't know how's things changing.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. So I have to look to Deborah to understand if she's seeing anything.
Okay.
I'll take a look.
Yeah, because the outside folks are just turning up, at least when I look at it, as lines, slanted lines on the calendar hits. Okay. All right. So Board of Advisors coming up. Brett, are you back for that or are you out for that?
What's the day? What's the day?
August 12th.
12th, I'm back.
Okay.
Unless I get stuck in the river with my fishing pole, which could have happened.
Now, if Bill had said that to me, I would have believed it, but I don't believe it with you. Sorry. All right. Do we have any hot opens other than Board of Advisors and making sure we've got Phil covered tomorrow? Looks like we're okay on getting Phil covered tomorrow. No hot opens at all? Or did we talk about already this morning with all the meetings that we've already had?
I think I'm on my fourth meeting of hot stuff already today. So.
Yeah, I think that's the better answer.
Over.
Well, we can talk about the one more, the GitHub. I'm reading this email on why the order got pushed again. So apparently on July 28th, which is today, or would have been there yesterday, I guess, they found some error when the product went to packing. They had to do a fix and then retest it because I guess they had to open it back up again. This is really bizarre. Nonetheless, so they rescheduled it and they're doing a retest, they're packing, FAI, and basically I said, is Taiwan working the weekend? Are they working overtime? We need to get it out. So that's the reason why it got pushed, because it got pulled back from looks like from packing before it even made it out the door, and they found an error. So they're going back and they had to relook at the whole shipment again.
And they don't tell you what's the error? Or...
Well, I have to go back and ask. I don't know what error it was. I just got this update. The mistake found when they were packing it, they fixed it and they had to retest it. So I don't know. I have to find out what it is. I don't know.
It has to happen to the racks like my phone.
Of course. Well, this one went into CFT on 6/15. It went through a SNCC issue. Then there was an interposer vendor, then the BIOS, and then they had to do a pending custom BIOS, and they released the BIOS that failed. And now it's an EST packing. Now I found a mistake. You bet. Why on get?
I have 101 at 9 with landing. I'm going to tell him there's wax built up in my ear. I can't hear very well.
Well, I'll find out what was the mistake. I have to know.
Let's just get some data for them, and when we expect.
So I asked them to have Taiwan work the weekend, work overtime tonight, tomorrow, get it out the door.
Say the word shipped.
Shipped, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay.
So Pam, the one update I have is I just got off the phone with iPass for the VW situation. They've come back with a counter proposal. We wanted to use the PV BKC in our BIOS rollup. They are proposing to use the beta PVC. They say it shouldn't have any impact. The only thing we're trying to figure out is we can't have it where VW has to remove a jumper to update. It has to be deployable across the cluster. So we're trying to verify if this solution still allows that. But at least iPass is coming back and talking to us now about legitimate options. So I don't think we're going to need to escalate. So we'll see where this goes. We may have to go back and talk to VW and NEC once we get a little more detail from iPass.
Okay. Wow, Matt, that's.
But we're making progress, which is good.
Okay, good. All right. Okay. Any other hot opens from anyone?
No.
Okay.
Knock on wood.
So Phil has yet another presentation tomorrow to the European team. Seems like it's been presentation IRS in the last couple of weeks. So we've got that going on. Other than that, it's just, Brett, I just wanted to check in with you. Did we get the email out to Cohesity yesterday?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I not add you?
I don't think you did.
Okay, I'll forward it to you.
That's okay.
I don't know.
I'm behind, so maybe I missed it, but all right. And did they respond to you by any chance?
No response.
Not surprised. Okay. All right. So we're still working the cohesity issue of trying to get that certified for American Express. I don't know that it's going to get done in August, but I know that they have been logging into the system in our labs. So hopefully in good faith, they're continuing to work forward, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, it's going to go one of two ways. Either they agree or and we write the check and they get started, and it may be a little bit late, or two, they don't. And then we, according, if they go back to what Phil was recommending in the first place, which is we just go back to Amex and say it's your problem.
Right. Now, I talked to Dave Yee about it yesterday, and what he said is that we could just modify the purchase order to put the language in there versus going down a path of putting an agreement in place with them. So whatever we agree with them, we can actually put into the terms of the purchase order.
What do you mean with respect to the support for letting us do regression?
Yeah.
Well, if you go back and read the note, though, I basically said I'm not looking for the details to be resolved here. I'm simply asking for a directional agreement. So I don't think there's much you can put in there except to say, hey, we're agreeing in principle in the future to that you will enable us to do regression testing, so we don't have to pay this amount of money in the future. That's all it would say. So it's not really an agreement. It's not. There's no teeth. There's no real teeth there. It was just at least to get some sort of concession from them for the 250K. So I don't think I probably wouldn't bother changing anything.
Okay. That makes sense.
I mean, it's basically going to be a gentleman's agreement, and if they renege, they renege. But that's all That's all it's going to be.
The only problem with this one, Brad, is you're the only gentleman in the equation, from what I can tell. The other side, I'm not so sure about right now.
Oh, I can. If they try to renege, I can be the bad guy. So that's okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to give everybody time back. I know we've been working crazy times here, so I'm going to give you some time back to go get some coffee and catch your breath.
Pam, I didn't somehow miss you. I had to reconstitute the email. I had to rip everything apart and put it back into the original thread, and somehow I missed you. I apologize. If there's any response, I will send it to you, and if there's a reply by me, I'll make sure you're at it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Hey,
all right.
Oh, wait. Thank you. No, I was going to talk to Todd. I just asked Todd to hang on for a second. Just want to talk about MMIDs real quick. But did already leave? Todd already left. All right, I'll catch him later. I didn't want to talk to MMIDs. All right, thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.